Salutations, people of the internet. Welcome to the database. First of all, if you're watching this during the summer of Kirby Marathon after watching my reviews of Dreamlands 2 and 3 and Superstar, then I apologize for reviewing things out of order. Looking back at this marathon, when I started this idea, I was debating if I should do Kirby's Adventure or not. It's the first game that introduces copy abilities in the Kirby franchise, sure, but at the same time, the gameplay feels outdated. Released in 1993, 2 years after the launch of Nintendo's next-generation console at the time, the Super Nintendo, Kirby's Adventure was considered a late entry game released in the console's lifespan. Everyone moved on to the Super Nintendo and Genesis, so it makes no sense for game developers to continue making games on a system that is outdated. That didn't stop director Masahiro Sakurai, however. After the success of the first Kirby's Dream Land game, Sakurai wanted to expand the gameplay style of Kirby to new heights, having Kirby go through a big adventure with new abilities and new bosses for the most part. Yeah, despite the previous games I looked over in this marathon, Kirby's Adventure is still and forever is the first Kirby game to introduce Kirby's signature copy ability, where Kirby inhales and swallow enemies that have unique abilities. How did this one new ability define the Kirby franchise as its mainstay staple? Was I really too late on doing a review on this game after reviewing 3 games that came after it? I mean, the obvious answer is yes, but that's all in the past. Let's take a look at Kirby's Adventure on the NES. But first, a drawing lesson. The game introduces us with a short tutorial on how to draw Kirby, our pink hero. While leaving the controller down, we are gifted with a quick synopsis of the main story. One night, Kirby was trying to go to sleep, however, for some reason, he along with other residents of Dreamland couldn't sleep. Turns out, King Dedede, who was found swimming in a fountain of dreams, threw away the star rod and shattered the rod into pieces, giving them to his friends. So Kirby is set off to find the pieces of the star rod, return the dreams back to the Fountain of Dreams, and give the silly King Penguin a good 1-2. However, after restoring the Star Rod, as Kirby places it back, Dedede tries to stop Kirby from putting it back, but fails. After the Star Rod was put back, the rod releases a mysterious dark orb and King Dedede helps Kirby pursue it. Kirby, now in possession of the Star Rod, uses it to defeat the dark orb known as Nightmare, another iconic boss in the Kirby franchise, who's been causing people to lose sleep. And his attack patterns are probably the easiest to recognize in the series yet. Once Kirby defeats Nightmare, everyone's dreams go back to normal, and it turns out that the reason why Dedede was at the Fountain of Dreams and why he shattered the Star Rod in the first place was to prevent Nightmare from being set free, and there was no way for him to defeat Nightmare, which in a way debunks King Dedede from main antagonist villain to a supporting ally to the protagonist. Kirby finally goes back to sleep in peace, ending the story of Kirby's Adventure. Now, seeing as I have a habit of reviewing games out of order, this game shows for anyone that I might repeat myself here and there. Case in point, the basic mechanics in the game and future Kirby games going forward. He can slide, jump, float by holding up the D-pad, and this is the first Kirby game that lets Kirby run. Although, given how easy it is to lose your copy ability after getting hit once, I wouldn't recommend doing that. Nothing's wrong with taking your time playing these Kirby games. Speaking of copy abilities, for the first time that introduces this feature, there are a total of 24 copy abilities to play around with. Many of these copy abilities have one action by pressing the B button. Some abilities can be used in mid-air and underwater like the sword, hammer, and parasol. Though if you don't have any abilities underwater, Kirby uses his mouth like a water gun to attack instead. You do have some copy abilities that are very rare and situational. The mic and crash abilities are screen nukes that can only be used once or 3 times and are mostly useful in bosses. Then there's this UFO ability where if you somehow manage to inhale it, gives you the most versatile moves in this game alone. However, it's the only ability that you can't take with you to other levels. Like, I get it, it's a cool ability that can do more than one command, but this feels really dirty. There are 8 levels in Kirby's Adventure, and this is the game that started doing acronyms for the level names. For this game's case, not only each level, save for the last one, are in alliteration, but their initials are based off the colors of the rainbow, only in reverse. While it's also nice that the levels have a fitting theme with one another, some of them don't really have most memorable set pieces in each stage. All levels have 6 stages and a boss fight, with the exception of the first 2 stages having 4 and 5 respectively. Along with the main stages, there are rooms with minigames to increase your extra life counter, and rooms filled with enemies that gift you with copy abilities. Museums are rooms with small enemies with common abilities, while arenas host mid-level bosses with rarer abilities. At least that's how I interpret them, cause I barely go into these rooms. In terms of sub-games, there are 3 of them. Crane Fever is a crane game that rewards you with 1-ups depending on the size Kirby you get. Quick Draw is a button reaction game similar to the most popular Samurai Kirby. And Egg Catcher is probably the most addicting sub-game of the batch, where you catch eggs that DDD tosses at you and avoid all the bombs. You find all these extra rooms by finding switches across specific stages. Some of them are tricky to figure out, but these buttons are manageable to find if you know your platformer's handbook. And finding all these switches is required for 100% completion. Completing the game rewards you with Extra Mode, which is just Kirby's HP reduced to 6 points to 3. Not very impressive, I know. Guess it's someone's bang for their buck. So for the next segment, I'll be briefly discussing the GBA remake of this game, Kirby's Nightmare in Dreamland. I would discuss the 3DS part of Kirby's Adventure, but it's the same game but has better graphics, so moving on. In 2002, HAL Labs and Nintendo released a remake of Kirby's Adventure titled Kirby Nightmare in Dreamland. This game features a new graphical update featuring a new sprite work that would be carried over in flagships Kirby's Amazing Mirror and Kirby's Squeak Squad on the DS. It's here where we see the hat design for specific copy abilities carried over from Kirby's Superstar, and this game features new sub-games for players who earn extra lives. One of them is a sub-game from Kirby Superstar that replaces the Western Draw game from the original. Replacing the egg-catching game is the Bomb Rally, where it's a game of hot potato, passing the bomb to your opponents, and those who miss are eliminated. Replacing the crane game is Kirby's Air Grind, where you race opponents to the finish line, grinding on rails while avoiding spike rails along the way. Along with 3 new sub-games come 2 new extra content modes I almost forgot to mention. Kirby Nightmare in Dreamland marks the debut of Meta Nightmare, where you play as Meta Knight in a time attack run of the original adventure, with half the HP and no continues or saves. While it's common to play as Meta Knight nowadays, back in 2002 this was a really cool treat, and this is basically having a sword ability with you at all times. Then there's a boss endurance mode, where you beat all the bosses from the original campaign in a row with limited health and no continues. As someone who enjoys replaying boss fights in video games, this is an awesome treat as well. Having to test my Kirby skills, beating all the bosses without getting hit is a fun challenge. Kirby Nightmare in Dreamland also spawns multiplayer support, where you can use the GBA link cables to play with friends locally. This can also be used for the 3 sub-games and the boss endurance mode if you're looking for more portable fun. Seeing as this remake of the old NES game, you may notice some changes in the game, like certain mid-level boss changes and name changes in copy abilities. But those seem like minor changes to modernize the Kirby franchise into the new generation. So with the remake briefly covered, let's wrap up the video. So that was Kirby's Adventure on the NES and Kirby's Nightmare in Dreamland on the GBA. As the first game that introduces the Kirby style gameplay on home consoles, this is a nice first step into introducing players to Kirby's signature copy abilities. So my final grade for Kirby's Adventure and Kirby Nightmare in Dreamland together is a solid A. I wanted to give this game an A+, however, the fact that you can easily lose your copy ability after getting hit once can get really annoying, and thus I had to carefully play the entire campaign, being careful with my platforming positioning. Having to constantly avoid getting hit, especially in boss fights. For the boss fights, I never used the copy ability in any of them, save for the fight with Meta Knight, as it requires for the player to use a sword ability. It shows how all the bosses in the game are manageable without copy abilities, with the abilities options being available if you need it. I'd also recommend the GBA remake as well. The sprites and visual art is gorgeous on the Game Boy Advance, and also had the best set of minigames right next to Superstar and Return to Dreamland Deluxe. The addition of playing Meta Knight is also in the GBA remake, which makes it an awesome reward for completing the game in normal and extra mode worth it. Whichever version of Kirby's first adventure you pick up and play, it's a nice short adventure that will lead to something big in the future. So what are your thoughts on Kirby's Adventure and Kirby Nightmare in Dreamland? Which version is your favorite? Let me know in the comments. Next time on the Summer of Kirby Marathon, I want to do a quick video on 2 spin-off games that I mentioned before in the previous Kirby video. That's right, next time in the Kirby Marathon, I'll be taking a quick look at Kirby's Avalanche and Kirby's Dream Course, both on the Super Nintendo. As for the next major Kirby game to review, I decide to let you guys decide. Should I cover the third and final part of the Dark Matter trilogy, Kirby 64, The Crystal Shards? Or should I review Kirby's return to 2D platforming, an enhanced remake that came out this year, Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe? I'll put up a poll for these choices immediately after uploading this video. When will these videos happen? Hopefully before the summer ends, that's all. I'm Christopher James, and I'll see you next time.
Yeah, he's a man of many, many faces. He may be pink, but it's real.